All right, guys, here's some support on question number 24. All right, it's almost there. So it says solve the following system of equations algebraically. Okay, so if you realize this one says y is equal to something, and another equation also says y is equal to something. So because both of them says y is equal to something, technically this and this should technically be equal to each other. All right, because they're the same y. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that this entire equation that I have here, I'm going to replace for the y in my bottom equation. Okay, so now I would have x squared plus 9x plus 6 in front of this equation instead of a y. So now I'm going to write what comes after, which is the 3x plus 1. All right. Right here, we're solving by substitution. All right. So what we're going to do, guys, is that we're going to move everything to the same side by subtracting 3x. Am I going to subtract it from x squared, 9x, or 6? From the 9x. Yep. This cancel. And now do I move a positive 1 to the other side? Subtract 1. Am I going to subtract it from x squared, 9x, or 6? From the 6. All right. And this will get canceled. The x squared I would bring down. 9x minus 3x is positive 6x. And 6 minus 1 is 5. Now we have our quadratic, so now we're going to factor. So now you're going to what, guys? Factor. So you write in factored form, which is 2 pairs of parentheses. So I put my x and my x. What are all the numbers that multiply to give you 5? Well, the only pair is 1 and 5. So I put my 1 and my 5. Positive right here means what? Same signs. So it's either 2 positives or 2 negatives. If we had 2 negatives, a negative 5 and a negative 1, what's negative 5 minus 1? Negative 6. But we need a positive 6, all right? So we need a positive 5 and a positive 1 because that's the only way we get a positive 6, okay? So again, guys, these are the factored forms, but I need to find the values of x. So now I'm going to flip the signs, okay? So your x could be a negative 1, and your x could be a negative 5, okay? So now we need to find the y's that go with them. So what you're going to do, guys, is that you're going to plug each of these x values into your shortest equation. So my shortest equation is the second equation. So I would have 3 instead of x, I would write parentheses plus 1, and then I'll do it again. 3 instead of x, I'll write parentheses plus 1. And I'm going to now plug in negative 1 first, and then I'm going to plug in negative 5 in the next one, okay? So let's find our two values of x, guys. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. So when x was negative 1, the y that goes with it is negative 2. So now we're going to multiply here. 3 times negative 5, negative 15. Negative 15 plus 1 is negative 14. So when x was negative 5, the y that goes with it was negative 14. Okay? And then now I'm just going to type my answer in. Okay? So it's always x and then y, and it's always two solutions. Okay? It's always two solutions. So I'll have parentheses, negative 1, and what went with it? Negative 2. And then I would have parentheses, negative 5, and what went with it? Negative 14. Because it's always x and then y. X, then y. X, then y. Always x and then y. Make sure you have the parentheses and make sure it's two solutions. All right? So again, just like that. Okay? So let's try this next one, guys. Let's try this next one. Okay? So again, we see that both equations says y is equal to something. So that means I can replace this equation with the y underneath. Okay? So I would have x squared plus x is equal to x plus 1. Now move everything to the same side. So subtract x, cancel, subtract 1. But there's no 1 to subtract it from. So I'm going to squeeze it right here at the end because that's technically where the constant should be. So x squared, I'll bring down. X minus x is 0, or they cancel each other out. And I'm left with negative 1. So I need to factor this, guys. And this is something you guys should remember. That this would factor, because again, you ask yourself what two same numbers would multiply to give you 1. That would be a negative 1 and a positive 1. Alright, because 1 times 1 is 1, and negative right here means different signs. Alright. So one is positive, one of them is negative. All right. Now you're gonna what? Flip. All right. So your x would be a positive one, or your x would be a negative one. So now we're going to find the y's that go with them. So I'm going to rewrite my second equation, and I'm going to replace x with these numbers right here. So I would have parentheses plus 1 and another parentheses plus 1. Okay? So now I'm going to plug in my positive 1. So there's nothing in front of this parentheses, nor is there an exponent. So 1 plus 1 would be 2. All right, and then plug in negative 1. There's no number in front of the parentheses, nor is there an exponent. So this negative 1 stays the same. So what's negative 1 plus 1? 0. All right, so that means when I plugged in positive 1, I got 2 for the y that goes with it. When I plugged in negative 1, I got 0 for the y that goes with it. Okay, so again, I go ahead and just type my answer, okay, as 1, 2, because it's always x and then y and then negative 1, 0. Okay, so again, just like that. Okay, and I recommend do maybe about 4 of these, because there's one other example that we have not seen as yet that you might see. All right, I think this is the one. Perfect. Look at God giving us all the variations. All right, so again, guys, when you're doing this, guys, you're going to use this equation, replace for the y in your bottom equation. All right. So I would have x squared minus 5x minus 6 is equal to 3x minus 6. Okay. So now I would go and move everything to the same side by subtracting 3x. Would I subtract it from x squared, negative 5x, or negative 6? From the negative 5x, this canceled. Now I would add 6. Would I add 6 to x squared, negative 5x, or negative 6? To the negative 6, because that's the like term. Okay? So now the x squared, I bring it down. Negative 5x minus 3x is negative 8x. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0, or they cancel out. So this time, this looks a little different. All right? Before, you saw this. Okay? This one looks different. This one has an x beside of that other number. All right? So this one factors a little differently. So let's see what the difference is when factoring this. Okay? This one, you ask yourself, what do they have in common? Well, both of them at least has an x. Okay? So that's all they have in common. So it's like I'm dividing, or I'm taking away x from each of those terms. If I divide x squared by x, I'm left with only x. If I divide negative 8x by x, I'm left with only negative 8. All right? So now I would flip, okay? So if I flip a negative 8, I get a positive 8. All right? However, there's no number beside of this x to flip. Okay? So because there's no number to flip, we're going to say that there's nothing there. And what number can you represent as nothing? 0. All right? So those are your two values of x. Okay? So now I'm going to find the y's that go with them. So I'd have 3 parentheses minus 6. And then another 3 parentheses minus 6. Okay? So I'm going to plug in 8. So 3 times 8 is 24. 24 minus 6 is 18. So when x was 8, the y that goes with it is 18. Okay? So here I'm going to plug in 0. 3 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 6 is negative 6. Okay? So when I plugged in 0, the y that went with it was negative 6. Okay? And those are all the different variations and how you would get your answers. Okay? So it would be parentheses 8, negative 18, because that's the y that goes with it. It's always x and then y. Then it would be 0, comma, negative 6. All right? Because it's always x and then y, and negative 6 is the y that goes with this x. Okay? So again, just like that. Okay? So good luck, guys.